Whoa, whoa, whoa.
The Xbox Series X has recently had its full specs revealed, and even though I'm not necessarily a hardware junkie myself, I understand a lot about what it means for games in general, with the new features we're going to expect, and also how Halo Infinite can utilise some of the tech at hand to really give console gamers a premium experience without having to build your own crazy PC setup. So in today's video we are going to talk about Halo Infinite and what features we might expect to see, with both expected to launch on holiday this year. That's if this damn virus isn't going to halt the production of the Series X, but I think we should be fine, and also why the Series X for most of us might be the best place to play Halo Infinite.
Ultimate Halo.
Hey up lads and lasses, Fletch here from Ultimate Halo. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. A like and a subscription would mean the world. I'm trying to hit 80,000 subs at the minute and you'd be helping out the channel tremendously. Also really curious for you guys to put in the comments down below, what are you going to play Halo Infinite on? Are you going to play it on the original Xbox One family, the Xbox Series X, or are you going to be playing it on the PC? I'd really like to know how that balances out, so let me know in the comments so we can get a real good idea of what people are going for at the moment. First and foremost, I heavily encourage all of you to go check out Digital Foundry. They're the tech gurus when it comes to gaming, and they did an excellent video on the Xbox Series X which you can find in the description, and I'll be using some of their claims and some of the things that Microsoft have shown them as a sort of reference point throughout this whole video, so make sure you check them guys out. Now the Xbox Series X, first of all I'm going to tell you what the implications it has on the previous generation Halo titles, because this is an indicator of how 343 could handle the treatment of Infinite on Series X. First of all, the Coalition, who are the caretakers of the Gears of War franchise, made a bit of a port to the Series X within just 2 weeks. Please note the term port, it's not fully optimised in terms of the copy of the game, they've just got it running on the console, and we can already see a boost in lighting, with a form of ray tracing being implemented as the Series X uses a hardware accelerated ray tracing system, and also ups the cutscenes from 30 frames per second to 60, and for those of us who don't remember, but on the Xbox One family it ended up putting the Halo 5 frame rate on the cutscenes down to 30 frames for a couple of reasons. One is so they could increase the fidelity on the models in 30 frames, and it also means they can keep a solid 1080p resolution because the game implemented a dynamic resolution system when the gameplay started rolling, so it could handle everything that was going on the screen. As such, to me this indicates that there's maybe some Halo games that could get a little bit of extra treatment on the Series X without 343 even needing to touch them due to the new computing power, as well as games like Halo 5 potentially getting an improvement such as frame rates in the cutscenes. The latter isn't likely guaranteed, although I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. The next new feature for the Series X applies to all Halo games, not just Halo Infinite. The new console utilises a solid state drive rather than a hard drive. Essentially, for those who are not well versed in the world of hardware, it means that the game data stored on your console is accessible much quicker than before. An illustration for this is State of Decay 2. This is an example that comes straight from Xbox's YouTube channel, showing how quickly the Series X loads up the game compared to the Xbox One. One thing that has been stressed is that this is not a port, it's simply them running the Xbox One version on the Series X, so all load times will be much quicker for all of the Halo games because that data is much quickly accessible, but also for when playing Halo Infinite as well. With us being told it's going to be a rather large game, with the world being a lot bigger than before, it means that load times will be considerably better using the new hardware, and perhaps quite cumbersome if you're actually on the old systems with such large environments being loaded in from a slower hard drive. Now also on the topic of solid state drives for the console, it's quite interesting how this also works. From what I'm able to establish, the Series X is able to use part of the SSD to be able to use as a form of virtual RAM, basically meaning it has an extension of the 16GB of RAM we already have, which isn't really a step up in terms of the RAM we already know. For example, my PC currently uses 16GB of RAM, so in terms of a next generational step, it's not huge, but having this as an extension can allow the developers to have a lot more assets and a lot more variety of assets present on screen, as it's able to call upon a bigger variety of data at one time with this virtual memory. So I don't necessarily want to assume everybody's on the same wavelength as me, so I'm going to put some things into layman's terms for those who don't understand hardware, or at least a little bit less than I do. It simply means that it's possible that objects on screen can be much more varied, therefore enhancing the immersion and the detail the world has when you're playing Halo Infinite. Another neat feature which applies to all games is the auto resume feature for multiple games at once this time. In the Xbox One family, you can go play a game, go watch Netflix and come back later and start up the game right where you left off. But you couldn't do this if you want to go play one game and then another game and then go back to that game and resume where you left off. As such, with the Series X you can now, for example, go play Halo 3 on the Master Chief Collection, then go to play Halo Infinite and play it where you left off without a hitch. It's pretty smooth and it'll allow people to flip between games without waiting for a very long boot up. But then at the same time, even though you have the SSD, it still would speed things up regardless, so it doesn't make too much of a difference if you ask me. So there are some really cool things going on under the hood of the new console. However, it got me thinking about tailoring the fans' experience in Halo Infinite, because I know a lot of us do have preferences when it comes to Halo games. Some of us play just for the campaign, others just for the multiplayer, and a lot of us are quite a bit of a mix. Some people like custom games, etc. There's a great variety in the community. Which then leads me to hope that Halo Infinite will allow a level of performance of customization for the player. If we look at games such as Forza 4, you can see that the player can select an option between performance and quality mode. Personally, I think performance mode is better for racing games as it needs a bit more quick reactions, and don't get me wrong, I think this absolutely applies to games that need shooting accuracy such as Halo, but when it comes to the campaign, I think a lot of fans do actually play it on lower difficulties to experience the story and explore around a little bit more when it comes to the world around them. This is why I think having a graphical quality mode in Halo Infinite's campaign which is capped at 30 FPS would be a great option for players, and then you can reduce the graphical fidelity for a higher frame rate to a performance mode to meet other players' preferences. With that also in mind, I think 60 FPS should always be a universal in terms of the multiplayer, given that it will give players a much more even playing field. But at the same time, who's to say that players on Halo Infinite won't be running at 30 FPS on some of the Xbox One family, just so they can retain visual fidelity. It's not clear that everyone might be playing on the same level, so if you want to up your game, especially multiplayer front, you're going to have to be on some of the newer hardware to take advantage of some of that raw power. So if you are considering jumping into the new generation, I'd either go onto the Xbox Series X for that or even PC, and maybe consider which options are right for you in terms of that. Another benefit for the new hardware is that there are going to be various ways they've implemented to reduce input latency. In other words, when you click a button in a game, the amount of time for the image to reach your TV and show that is reduced significantly. Another thing to consider is what you're using to display your game when playing. Monitors are usually more optimal, as you can see from my setup on screen. However, when it comes to TVs, they have a much larger input delay because televisions apply a lot of post-processing to the footage to enhance it, which causes this delay. Therefore, Microsoft have implemented part of the console to tell the TV to go into game mode if it's an up-to-date type of TV. As well as this is a new tech behind the controller and how the console processes the information provided. On screen you can see an illustration from Microsoft. A signal is sent within 2 milliseconds to your console. DLI is then used to it does something to do with a high refresh rate on your monitor and profit. I don't know, if I'm honest, this isn't my forte, but all you need to know is that there's new tech under the hood to increase the responsiveness of your inputs, therefore improving your game performance, which is critical especially for online multiplayer. If you also game on a TV and don't use a gaming mode, I would heavily suggest going to play someone else's PC with a high refresh rate, then going back to playing on your TV, and hopefully you should then understand how much of a difference it truly makes to your experience. Another piece of tech I would like to go back to, which I talked about very briefly earlier, is ray tracing. For those not aware what this is, basically it's a newer form of light rendering that casts more realistic, real-time shadows and reflections based upon light simulations in games and CGI films. Ray tracing for most games makes them look drastically better, but because of how expensive it is in terms of processing requirements, you generally need a pretty beefy setup to run it effectively on modern games. With that said, as mentioned, using Digital Foundry as a basis, they said they weren't able to find any evidence of ray tracing in the Deliver Hope trailer. However, there aren't many instances you can truly see it in terms of the environment we're in. Also, with the developers not being finished with the game at this point, it's certainly a possibility that's in their pipeline, or it could come again in the future. For those who want a good example of ray tracing, here on screen you can see a snippet of Digital Dreams. Their video shows Batman Arkham Knight showing before and after, and the light disperses much more realistically, it warms up the image in the scene, and much from all the different light sources. So overall, I think this is a pretty exciting step for Halo fans coming into the next generation. Of course, we don't know fully what extent Halo Infinite will utilise the new hardware, but I think it's pretty safe to make some degree of educated guesses like we have today, based on the fact they're going to be one of the main development studios with Microsoft, and the Slipspace engine has also been designed with the new generation coming in mind. Just on a personal note, it would be interesting to see what the PS5's approach to hardware will be, and I think they'll be more comfortable releasing a slightly less powerful console still to market as well. And I think at the end of it all, the exclusives will make a huge difference for both competitors, as they're approaching the markets in two very different ways it seems. Xbox approaching their consoles as a family, and it's entirely possible that Sony might treat the PS5 as more of a generational leap, with console exclusives coming just for those new ones coming out. All in all, it's very hard to say, but the coming months will be an interesting time for us all to get more information on Halo Infinite, but you can bet you're tuned into the right source at Ultimate Halo for the latest news and speculation, so make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Once again, my name is Jack Fletcher, and thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time on the one and the only Ultimate Halo.
Subscribe now to Ultimate Halo for more unfriggin' believable Halo content.